Hey everyone, GhostsOnHoliday here. In today's video, we're going to be talking about one of the scariest things that you can talk about. That's right, real life stuff that sucks and isn't really fun. For the first half of this video, I'm going to be talking about my real life situation as well as the channel here, so if you aren't interested, I'd skip to the second half of the video, or click on one of my other videos. To keep it brief, as of Monday, which was the day I wrote this script, I was laid off / fired from my day job. This already sucks, but in addition to that, a week before it, my 12-year-old car broke down and I was told that it would basically be as expensive as the value of the car to fix. In response to these horrific real-life events, I have decided that I'm going to open up YouTube memberships and Patreon sooner than I originally planned. Originally, I wanted to wait till I hit 10K to open up any kind of support platforms because that's a goal that I've had for myself since the beginning of this channel, but I've decided to go ahead and do it sooner rather than later, considering my overall situation. I do want to impress upon you as a viewer that this isn't the end of the world for me. I do live with family and I have a great support network around me, but the situation could definitely be better. So if you want to support me and get your name or username or whatever else in the credits of future videos, I'd really appreciate it if you'd check out the YouTube membership or my Patreon page. I'm still figuring out the benefits that I do want to roll out, but as of right now, I'll possibly post some behind-the-scenes looks at past and future projects, talk about what I've learned growing on YouTube, as well as my plans for the future and possible ideas that I have, and also post ad-free videos and content both here and on Patreon. But I will just say up front that I'm mainly seeing these as a way for you guys to give to me to help support my content as it currently is, not like a big bonus thing. It would basically be you saying, hey, I enjoy your content, here's some money to help you continue making it and to continue to live. Now, having said all of that, I do want to give a disclaimer. Please remember to put yourself first. You and your family's well-being should always come before a stranger on the internet who makes YouTube videos that you might enjoy. If you or your family need the money and you want to subscribe or donate, please wait till you're financially able to do so before giving. Again, you are more important than some stranger on the internet. While I would appreciate any support that can be given, please look out for yourself first. Now that we've been through all of that, here's a little bonus that I made up just for people who sat through it, or even people who skipped. If you did skip, I understand. I wrote this up just yesterday, so don't expect too much. These are just scary little stories that happened to me that are based off of real things from my life, without much additional flair, so don't expect like the best of no sleep level scary story here. I just thought it would be fun to share some horrifying or scary experiences that I've had in my life. Have you ever had things happen to you that you can't really explain? Or maybe you could explain them, but the events still frighten you in spite of the more logical conclusion? I've experienced quite a few of these things throughout my life, but especially when I was a kid. I'll go ahead and admit that I do actually believe in the paranormal. To what extent, I don't know, but I do think there are strange things in our world that we can't explain. I don't know if I'd say they're ghosts or like other dimensions that happen to flash through ours or something like that, but that's not really what this video is about. As a kid, I had a fear of things that hit that perfect uncanny valley look. I'm specifically talking dolls or objects that looked just human enough while obviously being fake. I remember my great-grandmother, we call her Gran-Gran, had a room full of these little baby dolls and porcelain figures of nurses that had these weirdly cartoony faces, yet very realistic eyes. There were so many of them, and they were all on these shelves surrounding the room, and I had to take naps in there because there was a bed in there. It was like a guest room, and I'd be looking up from this bed at all of these dolls surrounding me, feeling as if they were looking down on me while I was sleeping, and it always unnerved me whenever I woke up. But that's not where the terrifying thing happened. It actually happened at one of my childhood homes. Okay, a few terrifying things happened there, but, you know, child abuse aside, a few paranormal-seeming terrifying things happened, and I'm mostly joking about the child abuse thing. I love you, Mom and Dad. The story I have in mind took place around the time I was between 6 and 8 years old, and involved a blue glass statue head that my mom had to display her hats on. I'm going to put a couple of pictures on the screen now, but if you're just listening to this, don't worry, I'm going to describe it. It was a bald, glass head that had vaguely female-like features. It had a plain or slightly apprehensive expression on its face, with slightly squinted eyes, and not many other features to speak of. It was just flat glass. Even its eyes just were flat. Like, it had eyes, but it didn't have pupils or anything like that. It was just flat glass there, with enough detail to tell that it had eyes. The head was also a little big, making it look slightly alien-like without a hat on it, which only added to the kind of uncanny feel of it. This thing disturbed the hell out of me as a kid, even in broad daylight. I did not like looking at it. There was just something about it that did not set with me. And the fear did start kind of irrationally, but eventually, because of this incident, the fear became very real. Now, I'm building up a lot, and I want to say that no, it didn't float towards me like the masks in the Haunted Mask from Goosebumps. It didn't speak to me or like shoot red light at me or anything like that. It was a lot more subtle what happened to me. The head was positioned perfectly on a dresser in front of my parents' bed. I don't know if I've said this yet, but we used to live in a duplex, which is like a house split into 2 side-by-side apartments. So me and my parents' rooms were connected by a doorway. You actually had to walk through their room to get into me and my brother's room, and my bed was put in the corner. So I could perfectly see the statue head from my bed. And our nightlight was positioned on a table between me and my little brother's bed, which perfectly reflected off of the head. So at night, when everything was perfectly dark, I could always see a slight reflection and gleam of our nightlight off of the side profile of this glass head, specifically highlighting its cheek, eye, and nose from the side. As per usual, as I was climbing into bed that night, I gave the head a glance, just to make sure that everything was as it should be. At the time, I remembered it was wearing some type of green slouch beanie that my mom had stuck onto it. My parents were both still awake, so the light on the stairs was on. We were on the second floor. All was right with the world, you know, nothing too spooky. I didn't like it, but it was fine. It was just sitting there. It was fine. So I fell asleep. But later that night, something woke me up. I mean, it's a very common thing. I still wake up in the middle of the night to this day. Maybe having to pee or something, or maybe I wake up from a dream. But I sat up and was going to get up to do something, and I just happened to look ahead. Right through the doorway, right at the blue glass head. I couldn't tell what was wrong at first. In the back of my child brain, I knew something wasn't right, but it took it a minute to, like, click with me. And then I realized what it was, what didn't feel right. The light reflecting off of the smooth surface of the glass head was different. The reflection of the nightlight's light was bouncing off of both of its eyes and the front of the nose as well as its lips. The glass head was facing directly towards me, directly at my bed, like I locked eyes with it. That's it. I stared at it, but the fright I felt in that moment was so visceral that all I could do, bathroom be damned, whatever I needed to do, was very quickly climb under my blankets, pull them around myself tightly, and just sit there with my eyes squeezed shut, hoping that it was a dream. And, you know, maybe it was. There's a number of rational explanations. I mean, even with all those rational explanations, I'm still feeling a little bit of goosebumps just remembering this. But, you know, my dad could have been playing one of his infamous pranks on me, just turning the glass head towards me because he knew I was scared of the thing. But he has sworn in the past when I've asked him that he did not do that. It could have also just been a very short, scary dream for a child like me. You know, just wake up, see that, go back to sleep. Terrifying. It might have even just been my imagination. But to this day, when I still think of that and that glass head, it scares me. It makes me feel unnerved. It's not like a deep, terrifying fear. It's just like a, God, that happened to me. Or at least I remember it happening to me. And having said that, do you have any stories like that? I would love to hear about them, especially if it was with a similar glass head. That would be very interesting. But I've got a couple more to tell you before we end off this video. In more recent history, there's been some frightening things that have happened to me in the very house I live in now with my grandmother. The first one actually doesn't involve me at all, but instead my little brother. This would have been in his late teens or early 20s, but one night he was staying over here at my grandparents' house. Both of my grandparents were asleep, and as me and him are both late to do, he had stayed up very late. And he'd gotten hungry because of how late he was staying up. So, he got up, Went down the hallway towards the dining room and the kitchen. Again, to understand the shape of my grandparents' house, our hallway leads into the living room, and then there is a threshold opening that connects you directly to the dining room kitchen combo, with the kitchen just off to the right. So if you're standing in the threshold, you can see the dining room, but you can't see the kitchen unless you move into the dining room. So he had just walked down the hallway into the living room and was about to take a right into the dining room when he suddenly heard two people talking in a very hushed whisper. And again, I'm getting goosebumps just thinking about this story when he told it to me. This, of course, instantly unsettled him because as he had walked down the hallway, he had seen both of my grandparents asleep in their bedroom. So that meant that it was not them in there talking. So, already put on edge by this, he just sat there at the edge of the threshold and listened. But just as he tried to listen, the two people stopped talking. He sat there on edge, just waiting for there to be a sound, anything, and then, after a moment of intense quiet, he heard a very light whisper, a male voice, if I remember correctly, saying, "Shh, he's listening." This sent shivers down my brother's spine, and even as I'm writing this, even as I'm recording this, it still gives me goosebumps. Of course, he slowly crept back at first before breaking into a sprint down the short hallway, running into his room, slamming and locking the door, and he stayed in there for the rest of the night. I don't even think he slept that night. And sometimes when I am in that kitchen, I think about this story and I get chills. Like, I have to look around. It could have been nothing. It could have been his imagination. You know, we're easily frightenable people, but God, that is so scary, especially when I add in my own experience in that very kitchen. Again, me staying up too late, hungry, I was in the kitchen. I was actually cooking something. Again, to give you some idea of what our kitchen looks like, there's a window in our kitchen that's just above the sink. And through that window, you can see our screened-in porch, our garage, and then our backyard to the right of both of those. Just above the garage walk-in door, we have a little motion-triggered floodlight, which covers, like, the driveway and that area of the backyard that you can see through that little window. So, you know, I'm in the kitchen cooking, and I notice the motion-triggered light come on just out of the corner of my eye. I don't even look, because that light is basically activated by anything. Bugs, animals, like a light breeze that rustles the plants below it. Anything can activate that light. So I kept going about cooking, but then eventually I decided to absent-mindedly look up and out the window. And what I saw, again, is giving me chills as I'm recording this. Just remembering it puts me slightly on edge. Standing just at the corner of the floodlight's beam, just beyond the light in the lip of shadow, there was the black outline of a man. It was just a black shape. Almost like a shadow had been given a solid form, just standing there in the shadows facing me. I could see it because it was darker than the rest of the shadows around it. Of course, this instantly caused my whole body to like seize up in terror, and instead of running or anything like that, I just closed my eyes, looked down, and said to myself, that wasn't real, it wasn't out there, it's late, and you're just scaring yourself, you're already on edge. And after a moment, I opened my eyes and looked up. And it was gone. And I stared there for a minute just to be sure. I looked all out that window at the what I could see visible from the light. I looked in the shadows, what I could see from the moonlight. I looked everywhere. I didn't feel too uneasy after that, which made me think like whatever it was gone. Maybe it was just my imagination. I also made sure all the doors were unlocked because of that, because if it was really a person, that shit would have been scary as fuck. But thankfully, I don't think it was. So I hurried as much as you can when you're cooking something, you know, maybe even burned it a little, and then I took my meal to my bedroom, and again, like my little brother, probably didn't come out for the rest of the night. And for now, that's it. I do have a lot of other strange and frightening things that have happened to me throughout my life in both childhood and adulthood, like the fact that I did live in a haunted house, or possibly even my neighborhood was haunted. I got stuck in a weird hole one time when I was a kid, and you know, I've had friends who've possibly had encounters with fae beings, but like, that's neither here nor there. I just wanted to throw something together for people, so this just wasn't an announcement that would just sit there and be all sad. I wanted to add something to this. So thank you for listening. I really do hope that you enjoyed this, and I do hope that you give the Patreon page and the YouTube membership page a glance. It would mean a lot to me just to even check it out. But remember, like I said earlier, please always take care of you and your family first. I'm just a YouTuber. Even if I make things that you like, you should always put your well-being first. Anyway, thanks for watching. I appreciate it. I'm GhostsOnHoliday, and remember.
And he puts his hands in your face.
He just keeps throwing his fingers at me.